Elevate,
the podcast series by Elevation Barn.
You want people to have an unreasonable loyalty toward the company, but it has to be tied to the employment value proposition and the promise that people will get from the company to benefit them. Is culture a villain or is it the hero? I firmly believe it can be a hero. Culture eats strategy for breakfast. I firmly believe that. Everybody talks about it. No one knows how to do it. And so one of the ways you get leaders to work very effectively with one another is through vulnerability. Were you afraid of being found out? Were you afraid of, being fake? Like, what was your deep fear? I believe the more unique the group can be, the more creative the solution are going to be, and which, by the way, I'm hopeful will always outpace AI.
We all crave for more clarity of purpose in our lives, understanding how we can be more meaningful in the lives of others. But to be this, we need to understand ourselves first. Elevate helps us to reflect on our lives through the stories of our peers who have explored and discovered the hacks to elevate what's important and stand aside of what's not. In these episodes, we talk with leaders from all walks of life, sharing their stories so you can elevate yours. Please subscribe and join us. Explore your wisdom from these stories with others and join us in the barn to unite with new peers doing something of their own to elevate their importance. You'll be in great company. All right, so I'm here with my dear friend, William Ingham, who quite well-roundedly comes from the deep-rooted culture of the north of England originally through his father. Yes. So that's probably why I like you so much. And today we're going to talk about HR, and we're going to talk about the importance of that rudder to help guide leaders around the world. And you've had the honor and the power to lead some of the world's most cutting-edge and importful corporations, and we'll touch on that a little bit later. But I want to open up with quite a blunt, direct question, and that is, many people I know in the industry call you the Kingmaker, which is, I know maybe a little bit, but I'm going straight for it. Why?
Yeah. Well, thank you, and it is embarrassing to hear that. You come right out of the gate with it, didn't you? And by the way, HR sounds like a boring subject. I would call it human performance or org performance, and it's really around human performance, which, by the way, is tied to the concept of being a kingmaker. And so, for whatever reason, my deep calling in life is to help others achieve their greatness, much like what you're doing with Elevation Barn. Like, you want people to fulfill their purpose in life, whether that be business, philanthropic, personal, physical, whatever, their success. So it's very similar for me in that I really feel that I was put on this earth to help people achieve the greatness and really to step into the authority of the office that they hold, and then really help them fulfill that. And whether or not it be, this guy that I met that had a conversation with that ended up becoming an animator in Pixar, one of the first Pixar movies, to this kid from Rwanda that was part of the Rwandan genocide, who's now very successful in doing real estate development back in Rwanda and giving back to his country. Yeah. Playing a little part, and it might even be a word or a conversation or even a mentorship in guiding them in the direction that they're going. So that's what I'm wired to do, whether it be at the individual level, the team level, or the corporate level. And what I'm finding is it's more emerging to working with very purpose-led founders and high net worth families. And so that's what's really exciting about what I'm involved in now.
You sound like the perfect wing person to all of us that have doubts when we're going forwards in life. Egos are hard to manage, and to have somebody that you can lean on to reassure us that we have that room to fill seems so critical. But when I was growing up in my corporate career, HR felt like the people that were just making sure you had your vacations and were making sure you got the right things and the right holiday entitlements and stuff like that. Yeah. Why does HR have that confusing brand misunderstanding?
Yeah. Well, HR has been through many iterations, right? If you go back to, and by the way, I'm of Canadian descent, born in Canada,
Yeah.
lived in the US for years, but I also have British citizenship because of my father.
Mm.
So 3 citizenships, 3 active passports, by the way, which is
Oh,
fun.
nice.
So when I think about when I think about that in particular, HR has been through a quite a journey, and
Yeah.
so in the U.S. it was really rooted in compliance initially, keeping the company safe, making sure that everything is done well, and then operational efficiency, getting people paid well, making sure they have benefits, and then it started to progress toward things like performance and leadership development. And where I feel that it's going now is really around dynamics that are, to me, there are 3 specific things. One is, does a company have an operating model that allows them to translate strategy to execution?
Mm.
And what is the governance, the reward systems, the communication methods, the org structure around allowing that to happen, which a lot of
Mm.
times sits with a strategy organization.
Right.
I believe it's firmly in the responsibility of HR and partnership. The second thing is leadership team development, making sure leaders at the highest level, starting with the executive committee, are working well with one another, which often gets down into vulnerability, and are they owning one another's success?
Mm.
And then the third and most important category for me is culture.
Mm.
Is culture a villain or is it the hero? I firmly believe it can be a hero. You've heard the term culture eats strategy for breakfast. I firmly believe that. Everybody talks about it. No one knows how to do it.
Mm. Is culture born with the CEO, or can you make culture?
There's different views of that. I mean, I firmly believe that culture is initially started from the founder and the CEO. And I've seen many examples of that. I started my career with Larry Ellison at Oracle.
Wow.
Larry, he's very well known for, when he started Oracle early on, it was the art of war. It's not
Yeah,
enough that
tough
we
guy.
must succeed, but all others must fail.
Right.
Eat what you kill.
Yeah.
And there's tons of examples that I could share in terms of how that was the culture. Then I worked, when I worked at the Clorox company, which is one of the largest CPG companies in the US,
Yeah.
worked for this phenomenal CEO by the name of Don Knaus. And his cultural attributes, he called them leadership principles, were curiosity, humility, integrity, compassion, and optimism.
Mm.
And those are what I've adopted for me personally.
Mm.
I've also added courage as a 6th for me.
Mm.
So if you think about those cultural attributes compared to Larry Ellison and the Art of War, 2 highly successful companies,
Yeah.
very different cultures,
Yeah.
but those cultures are competitive advantages for them that allow them to attract and retain the right people and deliver to stakeholders and customers in an effective way that helps grow the company.
Working with Larry and the team there, was that like a baptism of fire of understanding a tough type of culture? That,
Yeah.
because I always think about the person, where are their values? And for you, is it like method acting where I'm now going to put on the cloak of this company and now act this part to be able to resonate what the brand should be?
Yeah.
Or do you have to change yourself to be that reflection of the brand?
Yeah. No, it is. I mean, the best cultures create behaviors that attract the right people and retain the right people. Now,
Right.
it's not all things for all people, because if you look at cultures within companies, you could have the culture within the risk department, which could be very different than the culture within the product department, for example.
Right.
It could vary by geography. It could vary by gender. It could vary by ethnicity. But to answer your question directly, when I found myself at Oracle, I found that even though I was there for 6 years, I believe, I found that was a culture that I did not like at all.
Mm.
I'll give you an example, by the way. I won't give you the person's name, but it was a very, very senior leader at Oracle. And I'll never forget, because I was in compensation at the time and I needed his signature to pay raises for everybody in the company. So I took the elevator up to the 11th floor there in Redwood Shores, California. I walked over to this person who was standing there, and he's the one person that needed to sign it. And I said, "Excuse me, Mr." And I gave his name, and I said, "Can I please get you to sign this, because we need to make payroll tomorrow?" He didn't even turn and look at me. His assistant was standing beside him. He didn't even acknowledge that I had said anything to him. And so I said it again. I said, "Excuse me, would you mind signing this, Mister? I need to get this signed." And he didn't even respond to me. He looked at me. He turned around, walked the other way.
Wow.
When he was 5 steps into walking away from me, he turned around and he says, "Now, who are you again?"
Ooh.
Like really condescending. And I don't know if I was bothering him or interrupting him, but whatever. You just don't treat people like that.
Yeah.
Fast forward 5 years when I'm at a different company. He's now with Kleiner Perkins, which is one of the big VC firms in the Valley. And I'm part of an acquisition team for one of his companies.
Nice.
Yes. So we go into that environment.
Yeah.
He comes up to me right away and he says, "Hey, nice to meet you." And I said, "As a matter of fact, I've met you before and I used to work at Oracle." And he goes, "Oh, that's great." He goes, "We're so delighted to have you." He could not have been nicer. But think about the different dynamics, the power dynamic
For
at
sure.
Oracle and the power dynamic where he's trying to sell me something.
Yeah.
One of his portfolio.
And you're like, by the way, who are you? Anyway?
Yeah.
You should have.
I didn't go that
Gotta
far.
play.
I that did definitely cross my thought, but I'm like, I've got to be the bigger man here. So
I love that you're in that role so that you can help sculpt leaders be authentic, because that example that you just gave there used to do my head in, that people would judge me by my title and what they could get from me versus as a human.
Yeah.
What are the principles and how do you guide leaders to be authentic and to be better people? Because corporations lead the world and you have a responsibility there. Can you do that? And do you do that?
Yeah. By the way, I love the way you phrase that because, and I'm not immune from meeting someone and thinking, wow, this is an incredible person. I wonder what this means for me.
Yeah.
And I really try to avoid that. And by the way, not to keep talking about Elevation Barn, but Elevation Barn has curated this unbelievable environment where it glues people together because of who you are, not what you do.
Right.
And so you spend days with people just figuring out how to support them and how they can support you. And in doing that, you have no clue as to what people do.
Right.
I've actually been through Elevation Barn a couple of times, and I remember finding out afterward what some of these people have done. And I'm like, wow, I can't believe they do that. And I was so impressed, but it didn't even come up because all I cared about was this person.
Right.
All they cared about was me as a person. So it's an incredible thing. So I do think that is one of the keys to helping leadership teams be very effective with one another. And I do believe company culture starts first with the founder and then with the leadership team and needs to be filtered through the organization, managed and measured. And so one of the ways you get leaders to work very effectively with one another is through vulnerability. And so there's fantastic case studies out there of getting leaders a way to spend time really understanding who one another are, who they were as children, what's important to them, what they love, what they're afraid of. I remember when this goes back again to the Clorox company, we went through an exercise where we did very deep leadership work that got into the vulnerability of leaders. Were you afraid of being found out? Were you afraid of being fake? Like what was your deep fear? But then the other exercise that we did is we went through a process, and this is quite controversial language, but this is probably about 15 years ago, where we would actually categorize each leader on the leadership team that we were in. And this was with the executive team in one of 3 categories. Are they a loyalist, which is somebody who is actively supporting your career? Are they a terrorist, which is somebody who's actively undermining your career? Or are they a benign saboteur?
Wow.
Which is a benign saboteur is somebody who's unintentionally undermining your career because they're not actively supporting it.
Yeah.
And so if you're working with a leadership team on that type of level and saying, our job as a leadership team is to move toward loyalist behavior, you have to get to know one another. You have to support each other at the individual level. And the team needs to underwrite the individual because we all go through times that we need the help of the rest of our leadership team. Creating that is a beautiful thing.
Would you call them out? Would you say, look, you're a saboteur?
Well,
how'd you go about moving that? All right, everybody that is solid, stand forwards. Where are you going?
Yeah, we did. So first of all, as part of this exercise, it was a 3-day offsite. And we went through the methodology in day one, which is kind of explaining what it is and leading people into the fact that this is going to be pretty contentious. On day two, they actually categorize what the other person is. We actually documented it. I was one of the 10 facilitators in the company that did this with leadership teams. We document it. Then they have to have a conversation with the other person. And they have to say, I believe you are a loyalist, a benign saboteur, or a terrorist for the following reasons, and reverse and then share it both ways. And then we would have a process that we would track for 6 months to a year in terms of how are people making progress toward loyalist behavior. People would have to meet with one another on a regular basis. They wouldn't talk about business issues. They'd talk about, what am I committed to you to do for your success, and vice versa. And then are we making progress toward that? And then we'd recategorize after 6 months to a year. If people weren't willing to move from either terrorist or benign saboteur behavior to loyalist behavior, they're like, I can't do that for that person. They were fired.
Wow.
They lost their job.
Wasn't it defined by the CEO? What kind of, like a lot of people in organizations that have CEOs, maybe like Larry, where it's about the hero's journey and kill and eat what we eat, etc.
Yeah.
That will encourage that feeling though of I've got to be about me, because that person may not be here tomorrow, or may have to fight that person the day after.
Yeah.
Or are people born and this is due to some childhood insecurity that they act like this?
Yeah. I'm going to take a risk here and ask you a question about your area of expertise, and then I'll mirror your answer. When you think about a brand and creating a brand, like how do you think about selling that brand to your target market, or is your target market everyone?
No, my target market is who I identify as somebody that will fall in love with that product or service.
Yeah.
So for me, it's about how do I ignite passion and support and loyalty behind that product and service. And that's not right for everybody.
Yes.
And there's certain brands that do it a brilliant way. Like Nike would say, we're designed to make everybody feel like an athlete. And if you have a body, you're an athlete. Yeah. They're trying to be for everybody. But then there's other like, we're working with Vivo Barefoot, where it's more purpose driven. How are we helping the planet realign, what's important in the world?
Yeah.
Yeah. I can see you diving into, am I a saboteur or am I
No.
No, just checking I wasn't.
Yeah, no, it has nothing to do with saboteur, but if you think about the cultures, the Oracle culture, the Clorox culture, it's the same thing as brand building. So you create brands that are unique and go after a particular target market so that they will fall in love with that brand and be like almost unreasonably loyal to that brand.
Right. They'll forgive you, right?
Yeah, exactly. Same thing with companies. So at Oracle, let's continue to use examples. Oracle was, let's create loyalty with people who are killers, who love to sell, who will go out there and do anything. They'll bleed for the company. We had an example, and this is a horrible one, of a very senior leader who was pregnant. This is an awful thing to share, but I'm going to share it anyways because it really brings home the issue. She got pregnant. She scheduled a C-section on a Friday so she could be back in the office on Monday.
Jesus.
She was lauded at that time. I don't think this would happen at Oracle today, but at that time she was lauded as a shining example for commitment to the company. Like just awful, right?
Yeah.
That would never happen at Clorox. So Clorox and what Don Knaus created was around curiosity, humility, integrity, compassion, optimism. But again, think about it. Oracle, highly successful, but is around a bunch of, at the time, and they've changed dramatically, a bunch of killers that were going to win at all costs, kill the competition, and they did. And then Clorox is this like incredible focused company on customers and making sure that our products are phenomenal and creating an environment that is just extraordinary. By the way, both Oracle and Clorox have created incredible CEOs that have come out, whether it be Mark Benioff, who started Salesforce, or Tarang Amin, who now runs Elf Cosmetics in the US, or Nick Vlahos, who ran Jessica Alba's company, the Honest Company. You know, so highly successful companies, very different cultures that are both successful. So how do you determine the culture and measure it and mold it so that it becomes a competitive advantage, just like a brand becomes a competitive advantage?
Yeah. In 2000, you moved from working with the large corporations into more founder-led companies.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah, so one of the most incredible experiences I had was I ran HR for Visa Europe in London. And that was from 2016 through 2020. It was an unbelievable experience for so many reasons. Visa Europe at the time was a separate company. Visa Global bought them.
Yeah.
It was actually the second largest technology transaction in history at the time.
Wow.
Behind one that had occurred 10 years prior. And then 7 days later, Microsoft bought LinkedIn for like $700 million more than we paid for Visa Europe. So we paid like $24.3 billion, and then they paid 24 point something billion. So we were second largest technology transaction for like 7 days.
Wow.
Anyways,
7 days.
So I was able to be part of running the talent integration of that. And it was a phenomenal experience of learning about the payment space, interacting with the Bank of England and the whole regulatory environment, working for different global CEOs, changing out the European CEO 3 times. It was a phenomenal experience. I was asked to localize in the UK, but I made the decision that I wanted to move toward working with more founder-led companies, like startups, either late stage or early public companies. And so
Why?
Because I wanted to start exploring, can you actually create a culture in a smaller environment that really makes a difference on the performance of the company and moving the company into a higher level of performance. And when I say performance, I'm primarily talking about financial performance of the company, but then also a highly engaged workforce, which is a competitive advantage. So highly engaged workforce would be a happy workforce. And so I felt like you could control it more with a smaller company and make a larger impact more quickly.
What did you find?
What I found, and I did 2 examples, and I worked for 2 companies. One was a marketplace company in the U.S. that had just gone public, and then one was a fintech company that was about a 25-year-old company, but was pre-IPO and private equity backed. Private equity is a really interesting and different beast. And what I found was, and by the way, in interviewing in both of these roles, and I was with each one of them for a couple of years. Even in the interview process, one of the reasons they hired me was because of my passion in using culture to drive performance, to drive incremental value in the company.
Right.
And even though that was my interview platform, when it came to actually implementing what we wanted to do, the CEO didn't want to do it in both cases.
Wow.
And I think it was because they were personally nervous about what they might be doing or what they might find out that was not moving the company in the direction that it should go. You'd think they would be very interested in understanding the data and the information. But once you actually look at it, it's very telling in terms of these are very specific decisions that we should be making in terms of what is the behavior that we want to drive in the organization. Often the behavior needs to change first with the leadership team, which is why what Clorox did around that leadership work was so instrumental. But what these 2 CEOs I felt were afraid of, because I think they thought they might lose control. And so by the way, I still have great relationships with both of these CEOs. I talk to them on a regular basis, and they still poll me about this work that I'm interested in. So I wanted to have a case study for incredible performance in one of these smaller companies, so that I could say, see, that's it. That's what you can do. And I'm absolutely convinced that it's the future of how businesses are going to be incredibly successful.
When we were talking about HR, my opinion of HR was it was to protect the employee so that they could feel safe and secure in their job. But you are very much like, how do you ensure the culture and the business success thrives by the right environment for the employee.
Yeah.
Can you unpack that a bit more so that a CEO or a leader in an organization can understand the key principles for being a good leader in the support of a great human leadership expert like yourself?
Yeah. So I think again, getting back to HR, I think HR, and I don't even like the term anymore. I don't know what we're going to call it next. I mean, we call it we call it the people function.
Yeah.
Some people are calling it people and culture.
Yeah.
Um,
Chief culture officer.
Chief
I've
culture
heard,
officer.
and-
Yeah. So it's evolving, and HR will always be responsible for the operational elements. People get it paid well, benefits, etc. But as you climb up Maslow's hierarchy, you get to self-actualization, and that's the biggest benefit for really effective HR or people functions, which again revolves around, do we have a solid operating model for the company? Does the leadership team operate effectively together? And is the culture a competitive advantage? And so, while performance at the individual level is really important, and team performance is really important, ultimately company performance is really important. And I've been in a lot of conversations where you talk to the employee base about the importance of driving company success. And quite frankly, without company success, the company's not going to exist. So, we can focus on happy employees, but if we're not making money, the company's going to disappear and everybody will lose their job.
Right.
That's stating the obvious. But how do you create an environment where you're to a large extent managing all of those in an incredibly effective way? And to be very honest with you, there are some things happening right now with leadership, with AI, that are setting a foundation like we have never experienced before. At the leadership level, and this is part of, I think, what Elevation Barn is doing with leaders as well, you are starting to train leaders to cultivate and understand their intuition to make decisions that are bizarre. A little known fact, I actually worked for a period of time in 2020 to help Kanye West develop his operating model. And I worked with his chief operating officer. Kanye West, or Ye, if you want to call him, is one of these leaders, I believe, that operates with this crazy, insane intuition and makes decisions that seem brilliant, but also crazy, like just insane. So I almost see an element of that intuition in him. I wouldn't ask anybody to mirror it after them, but people like Elon Musk, Richard Branson, and there's lesser known examples of people that are really starting to do that.
Yeah.
Hopefully people will use that intuition or that tapping into collective energy or being able to make unusual decisions in a way that benefits the organization and benefits humanity. So that's one thing that I think, again, Elevation Barn is doing as you create purpose. Mobius also out of Boston, Amy Fox is the CEO there. They're doing some brilliant work with training intuitive leaders and the work that they're doing, including working with a gentleman by the name of Thomas Hubel, which is a remarkable person who's working with Israeli and Palestinian conflict at the highest levels, who's helping the country of Rwanda rewrite their constitution using intuitive knowledge. So anyways, I could talk for a long time on that. That's one thing.
Right.
The second thing is around AI. And everybody's like, AI. I'm doing some work with MIT right now where, MIT says specifically, don't use AI unless it's going to benefit your business strategy. Don't use AI just because it's called AI. But in talent, there's this and jobs, there's this move toward mass customization of employment. Like you and I and other people, even in companies, should be able to figure out what is the career that we want. And as that changes over time, what will it look like in different ways? And now AI, and generative AI in particular, has the ability to serve ideas to people based on our interests, our background, people that we admire, people that we interface with, that might give very non-obvious career signals that could take us in a totally different direction.
Right.
than we could ever have imagined before. And there's companies like Gloat out there. The CEO is a guy by the name of Ben Rajuvi, I think is his last name. He's based in Israel. He's from Tel Aviv initially, but Gloat is doing some really interesting work in that area. Eightfold.ai is doing some really interesting work in that area about crafting extraordinarily unique careers for people that are different than what they've done before, which will help with engagement and excitement.
We've got a whole different wave of life coming up, it seems. What makes a great CEO?
So the great CEOs that I've been around are first and foremost ones that are deeply rooted and deeply tied to their purpose, their vision, what they've created. And by the way, I think there's very different types of CEOs, whether or not you're a founder CEO, and whether or not you're a CEO that's been hired.
Right.
And by the way, even for founder CEOs, I think founder CEOs are very different depending on what country they're from. In Silicon Valley, in San Francisco, for example, founder-led CEOs there often are people who will stick with an idea until it's dead, right? They'll drive it into the ground. In Israel, in Tel Aviv in particular, who has the highest per capita of VC money invested anywhere in the world, I found, and there's companies like HiBob, and I mentioned Gloat, and there's a number of others. They will develop an idea. If they sense it's not working, they'll switch to the next one. If it's not working, they'll switch right away. So they will switch very quickly until they find something that's gonna happen. So to answer your question, what makes a good CEO? I think being very committed and tied to your purpose and vision and not departing from that. I've seen situations in companies where there's pre-IPO companies, companies that go public and companies that are post-public.
Right.
There's three elements to me of business planning. There's strategy, vision and strategy planning, financial planning, and talent planning. And often with startups, it's all around the vision, all around the purpose. Like we're creating something great. The more you grow and the closer that you get to an event, the event becomes about a financial transaction, whether it's going public, getting bought out, what have you. So then it becomes about the financials. And so you're talking about what are the financials that we want to deliver? And then does that fit in with the strategy? Yeah, it fits in with the strategy. And then you go, oh, what about the talent? Do we have the talent that we need? And so the best CEOs that I've known are the CEOs that have and surround themselves with people and instruments that keep those three things together. Like let's always talk about strategy, vision, financial planning, and talent planning at the same time and build governance around allowing that to happen. But then I'm going to put a plug in as well. The best CEOs are ones that recognize that the cherry on the cake is culture, and they are actively measuring culture. And today we can measure culture like never before. Historically, it's been through engagement surveys, but now there are tools that can actually measure culture and measure, is it moving in the right direction toward or away from where it should go. That's the future of companies, I believe.
Unpack culture, because I know certain governments like Britain now, you have to clarify that you are measuring culture because it can lead to that success of the business, but also humanity. Unpack it through your eyes.
Yeah. So culture, I mean, people would have defined culture in different ways. To me, culture is behaviors. So it's how you want the company to behave in order to deliver the outcome that you're trying to drive. And the company that has done the best work in this field to me is a company called iPsych Tech. They're based in London. And what they've done is through deep data science, through behavioral science, they've taken 238 behaviors, human behaviors, which is essentially the maximum number of human behaviors. They've distilled it down into 30 behaviors that are on continuum. For example, strategic versus tactical. And so they've basically taken those behaviors, and then they will help map a company against what are the desired set of behaviors, and in what sequence should you focus on those behaviors in order to drive incremental performance. You can actually start with saying what behaviors will deliver this business outcome. So if we want to be the most innovative company in AI, what's the behaviors that we need to drive? And they'll say, through their methodology, they'll say, here's the behaviors and here's the order and here's the return on investment.
Wow.
And they'll publish it. Or if we want to become a different product company or a service company, what are the behaviors that we need to focus on? So it's a very interesting methodology and science that they've developed that I think is going to change the world. And by the way, and HSBC, by the way, is one of their largest clients. They used it globally and have phenomenal results with it. But companies are choosing to do this, or they may not choose to do this. The example that you brought up is in the UK, the governing body for FTSE 100 companies has now added a clause in their documents that say that boards now need to be responsible for understanding and measuring culture as a competitive advantage. So then the thing is, well, executives say, well, how do we measure it? And it's not through an engagement survey, which is how people historically have done it. It's going to need to be through something predictive and something that's rooted in deep science. And so, and by the way, it's happened in the UK, it's happened in Canada, and I believe it's going to happen in the US shortly, where either regulatory bodies or boards are asking companies to measure and mold culture and explain it as a benefit to the company, similar to the way a 409A evaluation in the U.S. determines the value of a company. I believe there's going to be a 409C. I'm making it up, a 409 culture that will be equally as rigor to determine the value of culture and what it's driving within companies. I firmly believe it's going to happen.
How do you keep people authentic? Like if I knew I was being judged by this kind of metric of how am I a good team player or whatever. But how do you keep people authentic so that you know that is their true passion, but also skill set?
Yeah. So I think of two things come to mind in particular. One is I think managers are so critical, like really talented people managers are so critical.
Yeah.
The best people managers are ones that have deep relationships with people and truly care about people's success. So that's stating the obvious, but the way that it's going to be measured in the future is through this survey methodology. That's I believe part of the work that Eyesight Tech is doing, because their survey methodology, after you determine the behaviors, the desired behaviors in the organization, what each individual does is every 3-6 months, you take this 12-minute survey. You can't game it because it uses ipsative and dynamic questioning, so it can't be gamed. And they ask you a question, and it's the difference between what I do and what I observe. And so, and you state that in the organization. So am I behaving this way? And do I believe this group is behaving this way, and vice versa? So it measures the difference between and gaps in the organization between who's behaving that way and who's not. And are you closing the gaps over time? So that's a very clinical way of actually measuring it. But I think there's other ways of, and using traditional branding information, whether it be communications or reward systems or triggers that determine if people are operating the way that you want them to.
It's funny, you see these companies like WeWorks or even Soho House, where they feel that they have these incredible cultures. You feel that they are going to be, even Selena, the hospitality group, massive growth. And actually, 2 out of 3 of those are Israeli fast fail businesses that have been nurtured. But then as soon as they IPO, it feels that the value shift has suddenly eroded the deep power of the culture. Is that a fair observation, or is there something else at play that you observe from that Kingmaker kind of sidekick observation of understanding what the challenges are?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen cultures erode for so many different reasons, and this is not a simple topic that I'm talking about it with ease and things of that nature, but it's a very complex issue. I'm excited about it now because I believe for the first time we have technology that will give you data, which is what leaders want, to be able to figure out, are you moving in the right direction or not? So I think cultures can be eroded by an event such as an IPO, where your focus goes from purpose to quarterly results. I believe it can be eroded by an incoming leader who is different than the organization,
Mm.
who hasn't necessarily been onboarded correctly. And by the way, I even have examples of times when I've gone into a culture
Mm.
and have struggled in that culture, and people are like, "Who is this guy?" I don't like.
Mm.
And so I believe leaders can erode cultures, and or situational events can erode cultures. I'll never forget, the time that I spent in Visa Europe from 2016 through 2020. If you think about that time, I joined, like I literally arrived there 1 week before the Brexit referendum.
Wow.
And when I left in 2020, I left 1 week before Brexit was the official departure of the UK from the European Union. And so you talk about those two events and the impact to companies. But then if you look at between those 4 years, the things that occurred, like with terrorist attacks in Stockholm and Paris and all over Europe, the Grenfell fire tower in London, which was right near the Visa office. So you have these external events even, and what's the impact of those on the culture and the mindset of the organization
Mm.
that people are going into? We've in smaller companies, we've had deaths in the family. What's the impact of that? So cultures can get eroded and derailed, but you always have to return to the facts. What's the vision? What's the purpose? What's the strategy? What's the desired culture that we want to live by? And are we sharing one another's success by truly taking care of one another in order to continue to move that way? You gave me a great example, Will, that's always been so valuable to me. You describe life as a pendulum, right?
Yeah.
And in the pendulum, you swing over to the negative. It's going to swing over to the positive, and it's going to go back and forth. And one of the things that I'm learning through somebody that you referred to me, who is a very, very wise woman, it's like, how do you live in the moment? How do you not have positive feelings or negative feelings, but have neutral feelings, which gives you the ability to have aha moments
Yeah.
that give you the insight that you need
Yeah.
to truly benefit not only yourself, but the people that you work with
Yeah.
and are supporting.
Yeah, you find that, right? We often bump into that, like just jumping in the shower or going in the bathroom. It goes in that neutral phase of a different agenda.
Yeah.
But that's when you're suddenly not super excited or super depressed about the topic because you're distracted. And then you get these aha moments because suddenly you're calmer.
Yeah.
And that was the beauty, like when the head of studio at Disney talked about it.
Yeah.
Can't animate when you're at the height of the pendulum or the other height of the pendulum because it will change who you authentically are.
Yeah.
And I think so many leaders get pulled left, right, and center.
Yeah.
Going back to the point before about the IPO stuff, I've got a couple of friends that have very large corporations that are planning what's the next phase for this year, etc. And he said, it's just EBITDA is the only measurement by the investment company.
Yeah. Yeah.
And culture has just disappeared.
Yeah.
How do you guide leaders that have built this, their child, to some extent, to this point, to then see it as valued through? It's like having a child that's now valued by their looks only.
Yeah.
How do you guide the principles of values to ensure that the investment company gets their return, but the founding company keeps their legacy and the culture?
Yeah, it's a very good question, and you're never gonna avoid the fact that the investors want their return, right?
Yeah.
That's foundational. And by the way, we want the return as well, because without it, the company's not going to exist anymore.
Sure.
And so that has to be a foundational element. So to me, the culture topic is, and again, it gets back to the term, how can culture be the hero and not the villain? Because cultures can erode or undermine companies and destroy them, or it can be the hero and amplify revenue, amplify EBITDA. And so it's a matter of convincing those leaders of, here's the data and information that will show you what the incremental return on investment is if you are effectively managing culture.
Right.
And I believe we're right on the precipice of being able to deliver that. And again, that's why I get back to this concept of a 409A evaluation. 409A evaluation, even if you talk to CFOs about it, they could say, well, tell me the valuation that you want and I'll back the numbers into it, right? But there is a science behind it for sure. So similarly, what's the cultural attributes, and first of all, do you have a defined culture as driven by what are the key behaviors and what's the focus of those? And then are you tracking the cultural impact on the financial performance and the cultural impact on the engagement of the organization, as evidenced by our people giving discretionary effort toward the company because they love it? That's what you want. Just like you want people to love a brand and have an unreasonable loyalty to a brand, whether it be Nike or LVMH or whatever it is.
Yeah.
You want people to have an unreasonable loyalty toward the company, but it has to be tied to the employment value proposition and the promise that people will get from the company to benefit them. I told you really quickly, I told you a joke the other day about an employment promise, right? So the story goes, this guy's walking down the street, he gets hit, killed, and dies. Goes to heaven, sees St. Peter. St. Peter says, this is the Christian version, St. Peter says, you can come into heaven or you can go to hell. We'll give you a day in each to be able to decide. And the person says, so let's go to heaven first. And day's great, floating around on clouds, singing, feels very peaceful, it's beautiful, etc. The next day goes to hell and finds a beautiful golf course. They have a steak dinner at the end, and he has a great time. So then he goes back to St. Peter. St. Peter says, okay, you've spent a day in each. Which one would you prefer? And he goes, well, I loved heaven, but honestly, hell was fantastic. I had such a great time playing golf. It was fantastic. So I think I'm going to choose hell. So goes back down to hell. The gates to hell open, fire, brimstone, wailing and gnashing of teeth down there. And he said to the general manager of the golf club, what happened to the hell I was at yesterday? And he goes, well, yesterday we were recruiting you and today you're an employee. So
Classic.
Your brand promise from an employment perspective has to be consistent with your culture, and the culture needs to be managed and maintained so that people benefit from it, and then they love giving incremental effort toward it because they feel part of something great, something big, something unique, something significant.
Elon Musk at the moment, you touched on him earlier, right? And has, one of the wealthiest men in the world, or people in the world, has now sort of bridged outside the role of an entrepreneur as Tesla. I find that confusing from a brand resonance point of view. Do you think there's companies like that their brand culture is strong enough that it can disconnect to the leader? Or do you think there are parameters that the leader should stay within for the brand's value so it doesn't get eroded?
That's a really good question. And my first reaction is I would want to see what the data says. Right. And so,
which intrigues me. I have no idea what the data would say.
Yeah. So if you throw Culture Scope, which is the eyesight tech product, into Tesla, SpaceX, Grok, the Boring Company, X, what would you find? Would they all be similar cultures or would they be different? I would argue they might be different. But they might have commonality. Yeah. And so and then it would be, well, what is the business strategy and purpose for those different platforms, and what are the behaviors that are going to give you incremental performance in those companies and create an environment where it's bringing the people in that we want. If you look at the thing that he's doing now with the U.S. government, the Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, and the work that he's doing there, he's brought in apparently these young kids that are just developers that are just looking at all different methods of trying to figure out what's real and what's not from an efficiency perspective, and doing crazy things. So,
do you think that keeps the human heart bit included, or is it just so much about data.
This is getting very political.
Yeah, just delicate with it,
Yeah, yeah. There's different. I mean, again, I think there'd be different thoughts, right? So, in one respect, you have the people that are being attacked by Doge, whether it be the Department of Education or the military or what have you, and they're getting emails. I saw one yesterday where everybody in the company got an email that said, "What did you work on last week in this one area of the government?" And like 50% of the people didn't respond. And so if people aren't responding to a note from Elon Musk, are they even working? So that's one and so in one respect, it's like if there's nefarious behavior that's taking place and it's not being managed by leadership, you need to fix it. It's cancer that's happening. And I'm not saying that's what's happening, but it could be. The flip side to it is, do you have this uninformed entity that's come in that is making all these decisions that are incredibly ill-informed, ill-informed, which makes me equally nervous. So you have to unpack that, which again is why I think data around the culture is an important thing. Like every leader wants data and information, and for the first time, I think we can get data on culture.
Yeah, you've always been known as a very fair leader inside these organizations. How do you find these policies like DEI? I know that is again a political thing, but it just feels like a human disjustice of work.
Yeah.
What's the sensitivities there that you, as somebody leading this kind of department, needs to be wary of and is considering at the moment?
Yeah, this is a live wire discussion with DEI. So much is happening in DEI, and I had the privilege to be chief diversity officer in one of my roles at a public company in the U.S. For a period of time. And so I look at the evolution of DEI in the U.S. And by the way, DEI in the U.S. is very different to DEI here in Bali or in the UK or in other areas. But in the U.S., DE&I has evolved in a really interesting way. Years ago, it was the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. Then it started to move toward diversity, and then it was around inclusion, and then it became around equity and fairness. If I look at the whole subject, I'm like, if I was to grossly oversimplify it, it's like, are we treating people as equals, and fair? And are we tapping into the uniqueness of people that allows them to perform at their greatest, regardless if it's gender, ethnicity, a mental issue, you name it. Diversity is everything. And so I believe in creating environments where people can operate at their best. The question that's being asked now is, should there be unfair treatment or greater treatment for a particular group because they have been disadvantaged for so long, or are we past that? That's a very difficult conversation. And I wish we could just say, let's wipe it all away and just treat people well. But even in that, me as an individual, I have my unfair and unconscious biases with people just because of the way I was raised.
Of course.
So even though I think I'm treating people fairly, I'm probably not. So I think for me, the most important thing in DE&I is build allies with people that are not like you. And be able to ask them questions that give you information that you would not otherwise have. This gentleman that I talked to about from Rwanda, he and I talk every 2 to 3 weeks, and he's much younger than me, but I can talk to him about anything. I can say, hey, am I seeing this right? A woman that I had the privilege of, who's now the SVP of Visa in Europe, she's not like me. She's different from me in terms of color, gender, and in a number of other ways. And she's a very close friend of mine, and I can ask her anything. So do you have people that are not like you that you can ask questions of to help you figure out, are we treating people well?
Are you looking for diversity of thought from perspective, or are you looking for alternative conscience to guide you from these people.
Yeah, yeah. I believe you want diversity of thought as well. Like to me, diversity is not just gender, ethnicity, and
Sure.
all the traditional things.
Yeah.
It is diversity of thought. And by the way, I personally believe like incredible innovation is born out of massive diversity. I believe if you want to get something done very, very quickly, you do not want diversity.
Huh.
You want if you want speed, you want everybody that thinks the same way.
Right.
You're not necessarily going to come out with the best result,
Sure.
but you want a fast decision. Get a group of people together that we're all born in the same place, all act the same way, talk the same way. They'll come up with a decision really quickly. But innovation, I believe, the more unique the group can be, the more creative the solution are going to be. And by the way, I think innovation is, again, moving to what we talked about earlier, which is this ability to tap into a greater energy and tap into one another and intuit decisions, which, by the way, I'm hopeful will always outpace AI.
Oof.
Which everybody says AI is going to take over, but is there a way that human intuition or collective intuition will always outpace AI? I don't know.
Which it should do if AI is informed by human intuition.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
We should be evolving ahead of it. But
yeah. Hopefully.
we're just coming out of one of the largest seismic times for employment with COVID, and it's taken a few years for resettling. Where's your head from the importance of workplace with gig economy into work at home philosophies to where are we now in that settling of that extremity? And what do you think is the right balance from what you've seen motivating and helping lift people in leadership?
Yeah. So I've seen many examples of this, and I'm on many CHRO groups, and we've talked about this subject a lot. There's been a mass return to the office. In fact, the previous company that I was with, we had 3 return to office exercises with the intent of getting people back in. They didn't want to come back in. They were let go. And you see JP Morgan Chase, Jamie Dimon, they just spent, $30 billion on a massive tower in New York.
Yeah.
Let's get all these people back. And they've created this phenomenal building, but they're getting pushback. And people are like, I don't want to, can I come back 2 days a week, 3 days a week? Nope, 5 days a week. So there's lines being drawn because the feeling is that productivity is advanced based on personal and individual connection. I do think that I see a happy medium as well. But the biggest thing is it's not all things are for all companies. And so just like with culture, just like with brand, just like with employment, what is your strategy as it relates to workforce effectiveness and why? What's unique and ownable to you from a workforce perspective? Is it some form of hybrid? Is it all in person? Is it 100% decentralized? GitLab is a perfect example of a company that was founded by a brilliant CEO who I actually interviewed with for their chief people officer role, who's created a 100% distributed workforce and has kind of created a brilliant ability to have software engineering develop using follow the sun technology in a 100% distributed workforce. You can work anywhere in the world. Now they've instrumented their company with brilliance to enable that. And so if they can do that, and Jamie Dimon for JP Morgan Chase creates his tower in New York, probably both successful options, but they're also going to be attracting a certain type of worker and retaining a certain type of worker. So the very nature of that is, again, back to brand, that's unique and ownable to them. That could be their competitive advantage. And I believe there could be hybrids of that as well.
Do you lean on that, what you touched on before, that if you want people not to think differently, don't have diversity? Do you find that if people are just there as machines working together, doing the same kind of thing, then it is more productive together. And then the diversity of thought comes by people that are more stimulated by diverse backgrounds where they're living, stimuli at home, etc. Are you seeing anything where the innovative companies benefit more by home working or being in the offices?
Yeah, I don't know that I've seen it one way or the other, but I do think it has a lot to do with uh, not necessarily physical environment,
Yeah.
but the environment of the mind.
Mm.
And so we were at the Green School here yesterday in Bali, which is a phenomenal example of a alternative education system. I looked at that place and the creativity that's there
Yeah.
because of that environment is astounding.
Yep.
And you think about what are the implications of that to the world, the future world. Then I think of my friend Pierre Coletzo, who's a senior leader at Macquarie in Sydney, and he's the most innovative person I know, and he's a data scientist.
Mm.
He's a guy that that took a Porsche 928 and couldn't find a button on the radio. He was restoring it. He couldn't find a button on the radio, and so he goes and says, I'm going to get a 3D printer and learn how to 3D print so I can 3D print the knob so my Porsche 928 is complete.
Right.
So like his is innovation of the mind.
Mm.
And that's what his team is like. And they're a distributed workforce as well.
Mm.
So I think it has more to do with the mind as opposed to the physical space. But
Mm.
I think it also has to do with how you instrument the organization.
Mm.
I will then come back to culture and say, how are you measuring it?
Mm.
Like, how are you actually measuring it? And if we go back to those questions of let's measure innovation, the difference between what I do and what I observe.
Mm.
Let's filter in work experience, whether it's an in-person or distributed work, and shoot it into the AI machine and see what generative AI comes up with in recommendations.
Right.
Who knows what'll come out?
You have an interesting tattoo of a lion
Yes.
on your arm. And,
yes.
I have tattoo envy because I've got nothing at the moment. What is that to fuel you as that is the ultimate king of the jungle on your arm. And yet you are serving other kings of the jungle as a profession.
Yeah.
How do you serve you as the king?
Yeah. So first of all, thanks. And at my age, and I've been around for quite a while, I didn't have tattoos for years, and so as I continue to live in my purpose as an individual, this was a depiction of a reminder of what it was. It's it's the lion, the king of the jungle. It's it's elements of love that goes out to the world and self-love that comes to me. It's a compass to show true north. So there's a lot wound up in here. That's almost a reminder of my calling and why I am on this earth. And so
what is that?
The calling of why I'm on this earth?
Yeah.
I think we started there, Will, in that, I am called to help people move into the full authority of the office that they hold, whether that be an individual conversation, coming alongside them as a consultant or a confidant. I do it in everyday interactions with people that I see on the street. It's just like I want the greatest for people, but I do my specialty is working with very high performing people that want even greater success and greater influence. And that might sound arrogant, but it's not about more or bigger or money or success or anything. It's about wholeness. And I think it's why I identify with Elevation Barn so much, is because Elevation Barn is around people with purpose and helping them step into that purpose. And so that deeply resonates with who I am as an individual.
Yeah.
And so that's what I was born to do, is just work with phenomenal leaders. And I think it's being fine-tuned to founders and CEOs with purpose, who, by the way, are some of the loneliest people in the world.
Right.
And so do they have somebody that they trust,
Yeah.
that can speak truth to them,
yeah,
and may say things that they've never heard before, that will resonate and cause them to step into the greatness of who they will become, which will benefit us all.
Do you think the skills of a leader, like young leaders coming into the industries now, these kids that are graduating and probably leaders in their school, do they have different principles that they need to abide by to be a good leader for the future than when we started out?
Yeah, I've worked with many different people, and as I see younger leaders come in, sometimes I'm very sometimes I'm very excited, sometimes I'm very depressed, and so and in some instances I see people who are doing just remarkable things and making remarkable decisions, and then other times I see people that are making decisions that are just derailing or are selfish. And so I think there's a combination of what I'm seeing with younger leaders, but then the other part of it, Will, is that the people that I draw to me are people, and it's almost like a centrifugal force issue. It's like, this is if you're drawn to me for whatever reason, there's a reason for that, and so we're gonna have connection that's gonna benefit you, and I will benefit from it as well. And if that's not, then people will be repelled, and I'm fine with that. And by the way, people that have unethical desires or are in it just for the money, or those people, that's not who I want to work with. I want to work with people who, and by the way, I think it's why I love working with you. I see your desire to elevate people. I want to help you elevate people. And often with founder CEOs, they want to do something with purpose that will change an element of something, whether it be education or pharmaceuticals or entertainment or what have you. And so and for them, it's about doing something that will benefit. And so if people are involved with that, even if they're young CEOs or older CEOs, that's my tribe.
What scares you for the future, and what excites you?
I'm excited about the newness of everything. Like I just think you have the ability to operate in a way that everything is new every single day. And and a lot of that has to do with not being positive, not being negative, being neutral. Like if you can operate in the neutral or operate in the now, it's a beautiful thing, because it doesn't matter. It's like that gives you the ability to do something do something unique. What makes me nervous is I see some leaders who I really question their motives and what they're trying to do, and I do see this beautiful example of leaders, and I would put you in this category: Amy Fox, Thomas Hubel, Andrew White, who's the head of executive education at Oxford. My friend Adrian Farina, who's the former CMO of Visa Europe, Pierre Colezzo at Macquarie, like just these phenomenal people who want to do things of purpose. And then I see other leaders, not leaders that I know, more that I observe, so I need to be careful of that, but seem to be using similar energy for evil. And I don't know how to describe it. So I see this divide more than I ever have before. And so I don't know what to make of it. Like I want to be involved in this and advancing this. This part scares me. And I don't know if that resonates with you or not, but it's like I see people using the future of what could be used for good, and I see it being used for evil.
Yeah.
And it scares me.
Yeah. You're a grandfather now.
Yes, I am.
The youngest grandfather ever.
Grandfather with a tattoo.
Very
You got it.
envious.
Yeah, you got it. Yeah.
Would you want your grandchildren to go into leadership roles in the future?
Well, I would. Yeah. I mean, I have two amazing grandchildren, and they're my daughters, and her husband, whose name is Nick, is just this. So it's Alexis and Nick is just an incredible human being,
Yeah.
highly, highly accomplished in his own right, and they're both leaders in their own way. My daughter is just a natural leader. She's just an absolute natural leader. Nick is a leader. He played professional sports in the U.S.
Right.
and has a very, but is also a leader in business and otherwise. And so they're naturally leaders. So I think that will happen for their children.
Yeah.
So I would say I desire them to be leaders, but I also believe everybody can be a leader in their own way. And so it's around, leadership often talks about, being great. And, even if I talk about being a king or a queen maker, yeah, my calling is to work with highly successful people. I don't believe every leader is necessarily called to work with highly successful people or have a huge, huge impact. It could be something very simple, but it's their unique and ownable leadership experience and moment that is unique for them. So, yeah, I desire them to be leaders, but even if it's a leader of themselves, it's like that inner calm that it's like, this is what I was meant to do. And so it's more around, to me, leadership could be more around, we're all here for a purpose. Do you find that purpose? And largely, and Thomas Hubel said this to me, he goes, purpose is moving to soul center. So you can be connected to why you're here. And he talks about specifically how to do that. But that to me is what is a beautiful depiction of what leadership can do. And then that makes you able to have an impact in the world, whatever that impact is. And you are a incredible example of that, Will, in terms of what you're doing. And I'm like shivering with excitement for what your company and your companies will become.
And it's so reassuring when you say that. I don't see myself as a highly successful leader. I've accomplished, I should be stacking shelves in Burnley. Realistically, in my mind, the little boy fear inside that that's where I was going.
Yeah.
But I've been lucky to go on journeys. But having people like you alongside that go, believe in yourself. In fact, let me carry some of the baggage for that self-doubt so you don't have to think about it is so valuable. And that's why I respect you so much as a friend, is the sense of, it's just nice knowing that there's somebody alongside you that cuffs your ear and says, don't go there.
Yeah.
Because you're not being of service or purpose when you're wasting your time and energy on that self-doubt.
Yeah.
And I think so many people out there have that.
Yeah.
I think my takeaway is find a William Ingham to be able to be alongside you, because you deserve that success and journey, and you need those wing people.
Yeah.
On that note, you're part of the Barn community, and a very cherished one. How can we help you be the best king and queen maker out there?
Yeah, I mean, as I get to meet more and more people in the Barn, and more about the process that they've gone through and what individuals are trying to accomplish, I think there's something for me, and I'm in a transition myself, but I believe what that's going to be is that I am going to be working with a number of people, and really coming alongside people to amplify them, to help them step into the authority of the office that they hold. I don't know in what capacity, and so
Sure.
And it's not like I'm going to go out and blanket the Elevation Barn, but if people happen to see this and they're like, I think a conversation with that guy might be beneficial.
Yeah.
I would love to have that conversation. I have no expectation of what it will be, and It's exactly like many conversations that I have. It's more around getting to know the person and understand who they are,
Yeah.
and and so really it's being a part of the community. It's wanting to assist in any way, as well as receive from people if they have ideas for me in terms of things that they see in me. It's often a two-way street in the barn,
Mm.
is people are feeding into one another, which I think is the beautiful thing about it.
Awesome. Thanks for being with us today. I know you're leaving in a day to get back.
Yeah.
Enjoy your time in Bali, and thank you for sharing the wisdom
Thank
so that other people can elevate their lives in what's important. Very precious.
Yeah,
Appreciate
well,
it.
thank you so much for your time, and I have thoroughly enjoyed the conversation, and I look forward to many more.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bill.